Welcome back, everybody. It's Michael Levitis with Alla Kurolapnik. Alla is a divorce attorney that does also mediation and is a big proponent of mediation process in your divorce. However, Alla, as you told me earlier, you can also use mediators or an attorney that does mediation when you are negotiating your prenup or your postnup agreement. Not many people know that. I think it's a very novel concept that needs further clarification. So, Alla, first of all, thank you for your time. Welcome back. And let's talk about that. If you are considering prenup or postnup, which you should, especially prenup, right, in this day and age, why should you employ mediators to negotiate with your future spouse?
So there's two ways to kind of look at it, right? You can either, my suggestion is to anyone who's looking to enter into a prenuptial agreement, who's considering marriage, I advise you to use attorneys that are mediation friendly attorneys like myself.
Right. Right.
It makes all the difference in the world, when it comes to, drafting and negotiating an agreement where you have two attorneys that have the mindset of a mediator. Okay. They're not looking to churn fees. They're not looking to, break apart the contract. They're not looking to, rip someone to shreds. It's a very different mindset that
Completely.
you use. Right. It's more of a holistic approach to helping people resolve their problems. Okay. So that's the first thing I would say. If you're considering marriage, you're considering a prenuptial agreement, then definitely employ an attorney that is mediation friendly. If you choose to forego being represented by two separate counsel and negotiating the terms of the agreement, then I would suggest or recommend a mediator help you reach the terms of an agreement. You're still going to need the attorneys to kind of review everything and make sure that everything flows and that your rights are protected. But I had a very interesting case a couple of years ago where I represented the fiance, the woman fiance, and I had another attorney who represented the husband to be fiance. And we were stuck on this one issue about gifts, right? And whether or not gifts from third parties should technically be considered marital property or separate property in the event of a divorce, right? And generally the law is such that if you're getting a party from a third gift and the present, the gift is to you and to you alone, that is your separate property, right? If it's a gift between spouses, that's considered marital property, and the value of those assets are considered in the pot when you're working on equitable distribution and dividing the value of those assets, right? So this couple was stuck in this one issue, and we couldn't understand for the life of us why it's so small in the big scheme of what we do and how, what's to be included in an agreement like a prenuptial agreement. And it's such a small thing. I mean, unless you're dealing with inheritance rights and some sort of, big wealth that you're trying to protect from family, right? It's a very small issue, and we couldn't understand why we were stuck on that, right? So we send the parties out to a mediator. We said, you know what, guys, why don't you try a session of mediation? Maybe if without the attorneys in the room, you guys will have the floor to yourselves, and we'll create a space for you to be able to discuss this issue.
Yeah, and it's a much more amicable process, right?
That's right. That's right. Because as an attorney, you still have to represent your client's rights. As mediation friendly and as much of a holistic approach as you have to helping these families resolve their problems, either before they get married or afterwards, it's still, if you're representing a client, you still need to zealously represent your client, right?
That's
your job.
You bring up an excellent point, because when you negotiate a prenup and you have two attorneys there, it feels like a more adversarial process, right?
Well, that's why
when you have
that's exactly why I say you should exactly. That's exactly why I say you should really consider hiring an attorney that has a much, a mediation mindset, right? Because then you can kind of, and look, nobody naturally goes into prenup work saying we're going to rip this apart, right? Because that's not what you want to do. That's not your job. But, I have seen a handful of these turn quite contentious, right? And weddings being called off and weddings being put off. And it's the last thing you want to do is break this couple apart, right?
Yep.
So
Alla, you know what? I just want to add to this, if I may. Sometimes attorneys, they like to impress their clients with their legal knowledge, with their zeal to represent their clients, and they go a little bit overboard, where the process becomes much more conflict-ridden than it should be, because this is a couple that is getting married, that is planning to spend their whole life together.
Right.
And sometimes attorneys with their legalese and fighting over nitty-gritty can actually turn the process sour. That's why your recommendation is great, to have first attorneys for mediation friendly and have a mediator in the room without attorney.
Right. So going back to this couple that I had, so we send them out to mediation, and it turns out it was such a simple issue that the gentleman, I guess, he was left with all of his grandmother's jewelry, right? And he didn't want to upset the woman by basically saying, look, I'm going to give this to you, but if we get divorced, I kind of want this back because I have nobody else in my family is going to have it. So it's up to me to pass it along down my bloodline to whoever, my next of kin, and I don't want that memory to be forgotten. It was that simple, something that he couldn't tell her through us, right? Or we couldn't figure out that when they went into mediation, it was something that they both explored, and she was so much more appreciative of where the place that it was coming from, that we ended up resolving that issue and finalizing the agreement.
I love hearing those stories, because the stories bring the law to life. You see how what you do actually helps people resolve those issues. Love it. Okay, Alla, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. And in our next video, we're going to talk about post-nuptial agreement, because everybody knows what a prenup is. We all heard about it. We see it in the movies. We see it in the news. Post-nuptial is, I think, a little bit more rare. So maybe we can talk about why, in what circumstances would people want a post-nup, its effect on mediation, and how can you convince the other party to sign a post-nup once you're already married, okay? Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Alla, thank you so much for your time. And of course, this is just a general legal advice. For your advice that is specific to your situation, you should definitely call an attorney like Alla Kurolapnik. The phone number and the website is on the bottom of the screen. Thank you. Until next time.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.